How do I deal with guilt? This is a question from Chiwoniso. How do I deal with guilt from dealing with psychiatric symptoms?
That's a tough one. I think when we have a self-concept that is not what we want and not normal or neurotypical, there's a deep sense of guilt and shame because we become burdens to our families, we become less functional, we're a burden on society. And that's just not true. But I know how the experience of not being neurotypical is versus the perception. And guilt is an unproductive emotion, which is the counseling answer, and that's what I would say to a client. Guilt is an unproductive emotion. However, I understand that you feel guilty because it's not just you going through it. Psychiatric symptoms don't happen in a vacuum either. They affect the system. What we can do is claim every victory that you are dealing with the symptoms. Every time you manage a symptom, that's a victory. There's nothing to feel guilty about. That's something to celebrate. You overcame a symptom. That's a big deal. And it doesn't matter how big or small. You're overcoming. You're managing. You're doing your whatever it is that you're doing in spite of. Maybe even because of. Maybe it can be a source of inspiration rather than a source of guilt and shame. And I would hope that through destigmatization and psychoeducation, our systems and loved ones can also understand the victories from the battles that we fight on a daily basis, especially if they haven't been through it themselves. A lot of people go through studies without anxiety, and good for them. I wasn't one of them. And enlightening someone to the process of what's physiologically happening. A, it's real. B, it's sometimes debilitating. And C, sometimes my best effort is 60% on a day. But you know what? I gave it my 60%. There's no guilt there. There's only celebration. And there's only holding on to that victory so that you know you can do it again. You've got proof. You've got evidence of the fact that you have survived it. You've conquered it. You've managed it. There's no guilt because you're doing the doing. You're putting in the work. You're doing the actions that get you through. There's no guilt around that.
I think it was the book Thinking Fast and Slow, where they talk about how humans are conditioned to overemphasize bad news, because when we were living in the jungles, we would listen for the lion stalking in the grass, which was a very soft sound compared to the beautiful trees in the bush. But we knew that the lion was danger, and we overemphasized the bad news in our lives. So when you talk about the 60-40, we tend to focus on the hole in the donut, the 40% of what we didn't manage to achieve or get through today. But there's the 60%, there's the donut itself, the lion could be something else, celebrate the birds, and so I just got a lot of insight from that book, which I think you've read as well, and, very insightful as to how humans have been conditioned to overemphasize bad news. And we see it playing out in the pandemic. We see it playing out in the news. It's how we get fake news. It's how we get clickbait. It's how social media can also play a negative role in our emotions, because we overemphasize and we click on the things that feed that doubt and the negative stories that play out in our lives, and that as humans we tend to respond to disproportionately than to the good news.